Good morning, everyone joining us live. We appreciate it. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching the recording later. We're very grateful for your participation. This is today's edition of My Empowered Political Life. This is brought to you by our company, Personal Empowerment Services. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. We do more than politics on here. We talk about law, taxes, goal setting, empowering your business and personal life in lots of ways. So please like, subscribe, and share. We're grateful for all of it. So today, we are talking about whether due process is dead. The notion of due process. Is it time to rest in peace, due process? Let's find out. Let's see. It certainly looks like it might be on the way. So, what is due process? Here in the United States, due process is found in the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Uh, it only requires a couple of things. Due process is not super hard to provide. It's not super complicated. It requires that somebody be given notice of the allegations or the charges against them and some sort of opportunity to contest those charges. Now, what that notice is, what that opportunity is, depends on the context. But basically, due process just means if the government thinks you've done something wrong, they have to tell you what it is they think you did wrong. They have to give you some notice of that, and they have to give you an opportunity to challenge it. Now, in the criminal context, this basically means, you get your day in court. You get some defense counsel, you get a trial by jury, you get to know who has accused you, you get to cross-examine witnesses, you get to see the evidence against you, and you get a chance to prove that you didn't do it, or not prove that you didn't do it, but challenge the prosecution's assertion that you did it to show that you're not guilty. And if you're not a citizen or lawful permanent resident, this might mean immigration court, more specifically. You get a specialist immigration judge and a chance to argue your case, but you are still given notice of the allegations against you and a chance to challenge those allegations. So, what's happening now? We're going to look at three recent cases. These are cases that we've covered on our daily show here. And so I'm not going to go in depth in each one. It's going to be a summary. We can link to our videos of each of those cases. So if you want to go in more depth on them. And we're going to talk about whether those individuals are receiving due process under the law. So let's talk about Mahmoud Khalil. You may remember him. We talked about him in depth a couple of weeks ago. This was he was at Columbia University. He is a lawful permanent resident. He has a green card. He's married to a U.S. citizen who is pregnant. He's been accused of no crime, as far as I'm aware. There's been no deportation order, no indictment, no arrest warrant to go nab him, nothing like that. Now, you might think if I'm standing around on the street or hanging out with my family and I'm accused of no crime, I have no deportation order, there's no arrest warrant, you're safe, right? We would all typically think that we're okay in that circumstance. However, Mahmoud Khalil was accosted by unidentified officers right in front of his wife. You may remember the video. We watched the video together right here on this show. His wife was understandably terrified. The officers would not tell her anything about who they are, what's going on. Mr. Khalil was remarkably calm under the circumstances, much more calm than most of us would be. I think I was really impressed with his calmness. He was taken to a detention facility in Louisiana from the Northeast where they live. The only allegation against him is that he said things the administration does not like. Again, he's not accused of any crime. He's not accused of violating our immigration laws. The only allegation is that he said something unpopular with the current administration. No criminal charges have been filed against him. There's been no arrest warrant issued. He's not even had a hearing in immigration court and no deportation order. Now, does that sound like we are meeting the minimum standard of due process under the Fifth Amendment as I described it a minute ago? Remember, I said you have to have notice of the charges against you and an opportunity to challenge them. Here, There was no notice, no opportunity. And ICE is refusing to release him from the detention center in Louisiana. A judge in New Jersey recently, actually just yesterday, I believe, said that the case is going to remain in New Jersey. The federal government tried to remove the case to Louisiana. As sort of a side note, a lot of folks who are undergoing this sort of treatment are being moved to Louisiana from around the country. Um, and it appears that part of that is that the federal government does not want the lawsuits to happen in their home states. The federal government's trying to argue that now that they're in Louisiana, that the lawsuits to free them all have to happen in Louisiana. So I assume the federal government thinks they have some sort of home court advantage in Louisiana. You may also remember the case of Rumeysa Öztürk, she's from Turkey. This happened in Boston. She is a lawful visa holder. She is here legally. She has followed our rules. She has been accused of no crime. There is no deportation order, no indictment, no arrest warrant. What happened to Ms. Öztürk? You may remember we also watched the video of this together on this show last week. She was accosted by masked plainclothes officers who would not identify themselves. And in fact, they did not even pull out badges until after they had accosted her. And the badges, quite frankly, you can order those online. The badges, your plain clothes and masked, won't identify yourself. We can all order badges that look just like that online in 5 minutes. So who knows if that means anything. We watched the bystander video where the bystander was wondering if this was a kidnapping because it sure looked like a kidnapping to most of us. She also was taken to the detention facility in Louisiana. The only allegation against her is she said things the administration does not like. There's no allegation of any criminal activity whatsoever. No criminal charges have been filed against her. There's been no arrest warrant. And again, not even a hearing in immigration court. So again, does this meet the minimum standard of due process under the Fifth Amendment? She was given no notice, no opportunity to challenge anything. She was simply accosted and taken off. And now she's been sort of disappeared. And then just yesterday, we discussed the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which is one of the most disturbing we've discussed. And yesterday, you could probably tell I was a little bit emotional and trying to keep myself calm to talk about the facts of the case. He is here lawfully under an immigration judge's order. He was accused of crimes only after the fact. There's no deportation order, no indictment, no criminal charges, no arrest warrant, nothing like that. This is Mr. Abrego Garcia. You may remember he's here from El Salvador. He escaped gang violence. He in 2019 he got legal status when an immigration judge said he has permission to remain and should not be deported. He holds down a steady blue collar job. He provides for his wife and his disabled 5-year-old son. He was accosted right in front of his son at grandma's house. They staked out grandma's house so that they could accost him with no cause. So Abrego Garcia was accosted by agents, as I said, right in front of his disabled 5-year-old son at grandma's house. This is another picture of him. This is him in El Salvador at one of the most brutal and sadistic prisons in the world. Um, some people describe it as a torture dungeon. I may do a separate video on the conditions in this prison and the people we are sending there. And so you see the masked El Salvadorian guards frog marching him away in deliberately humiliating fashion. So he was put on that airplane to El Salvador. He was put on it very quickly before anybody knew what happened. His family was not told what happened. There was no deportation order, no arrest warrant, not even a hearing in immigration court. And again, he had permission to be here. Again, does this meet the minimum standard of due process under the Fifth Amendment? He was given no notice of any charges against him, no opportunity to contest them. And now he is in that brutal prison in El Salvador, apparently indefinitely. It even gets worse in the case of Abrego Garcia. The government in court admitted that it violated a court order. They admitted it. We talked about this yesterday. We actually quoted from the government's briefing extensively so that you knew I was not mischaracterizing it. You may remember the government admitted that it made a administrative error. Oopsie, we made a mistake. I don't know that I believe it, as you might be able to tell. And then the government said the court cannot order him returned, and they said the president cannot order him returned. So the government's argument is he's just gone forever. We talked about this yesterday. We'll link to yesterday's video on how the government is now they're saying the quiet part out loud at this point. Basically, they're saying that we can arrest anyone, we can send you to El Salvador, and once you're there, nothing can be done. The evidence, and more has come out since yesterday's video, part of why I'm getting this a little bit. The evidence against Mr. Abrego Garcia, the only evidence the government had was one anonymous person in a Home Depot parking lot who supposedly told one police officer that Abrego Garcia is an MS-13, and that officer supposedly referred that information to ICE. So the government's only evidence against him is a double hearsay that he may or may not be part of a criminal gang. That's it. That's it. He was never convicted of anything. Nobody knows who this person in the Home Depot parking lot was. And the police department, when they were asked to produce that police officer for testimony, they said he was suspended. And the lies just keep coming. The lies keep coming, which is not really helping. It's not helping the cause of due process that the administration is literally lying about this stuff. So we're going to talk about lies and the lying liars who tell them. Vice President Vance, quote, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. Now, to be clear, that is a lie. It is not true. It is demonstrably not true. How do I know that? Because I read the briefing in the court case. He was not convicted of anything. He just wasn't. And he did have a legal right to be here. The government admits in court that he had permission from a judge to be here and that it made a mistake by sending him away. Vice President Vance also said whatever due process he was entitled to, he received. I would love to know what Mr. Vance thinks due process is, because Abrego Garcia, he had no notice of any allegations against him and no opportunity to contest it. So I'm not really sure what sort of due process he's talking about here. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. This individual was involved in human trafficking. This individual was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang. Nobody knows where this comes from. As far as I can tell, it's made up. If this were true, the government would have said so 5 years ago in court when he had an immigration hearing, and they would have said so this week in court during the habeas corpus hearing. But the government said no such thing in court. Our press secretary also said, there's a lot of evidence. DHS and ICE have that evidence, and I saw it this morning. As far as I can tell, she is simply making this up as she goes along. Again, where's the evidence? When asked to produce the evidence, she couldn't or wouldn't. And again, 5 years ago in the immigration hearing with Mr. Abrego Garcia, the government produced no such evidence of this. And this week in court during the habeas hearing, the government produced no such evidence. Remember, in public, they can say anything they want. In public, they can say anything they want. In a court of law, they have to make statements under penalty of perjury. And when the government is making statements under penalty of perjury, they're contradicting what the government is saying in public. So I'm going to go with what the government is saying in court under penalty of perjury, because the attorneys don't want to get in trouble for perjuring themselves. Again, if you want to see more like this, if you want to hear about this, please smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, Personal Empowerment Services, so you can get notified of all this. Share this video with your friends and family who you think could benefit from it, especially those who you think may not be following this and might not be informed about what's going on. I am hoping that some of us start to wake up at this point. It can be a little bit like a frog in boiling water. When you boil slowly, by the time you realize that it's too late, we need to wake up and realize that the water's getting very, very hot and we need to get out of it and we need to do something about it. So that's what we're trying to do on this channel. I'm following all this all the time as part of my job and business anyway, so you don't have to. And then I'm giving you these daily updates so that you can see some of the most important stories of the day. So please share. All right, doors and corners. We are like detectives walking into a dangerous room. Let's look behind the doors and look around the corners. Is due process dead? This is the real question right now. Here's the thing you need to remember. No due process for some people means no due process for anyone, including you. You might say, but look around you. There's lots of cases happening right now where people are getting due process. Well, sure. But even a handful of cases with no due process becomes like a small burning ember in the forest that spreads very quickly. And it means the ember could fly and spread and hit anyone anytime. It means tomorrow you might be the one who's accused of something and you get no due process. And you'll say, but it can't happen to me. Well, everybody that's happening to right now thought it couldn't happen to them. And now it is. There's no reason it can't happen to you. According to the government's arguments in court right now, the government believes it has the power to accost you with no accusation of any crime and send you to a foreign prison. And once you're there, you can never return. That is literally the government's argument in court right now. So it can happen to anyone. It could happen to me. They could get mad at me for these videos. Thankfully, I'm small fish right now. But I know people doing similar things who are big fish and who are literally worried about their safety. And the examples looked at today prove the government is not providing due process to the people it doesn't like. So, God forbid the government doesn't like you or doesn't like what you're saying. We've also looked at attacks on law firms and the legal protection over the last couple of weeks. Sanctions issued with no notice and no ability to challenge. That's not due process. And the new presidential memorandum attacking the entire legal profession, which we talked about a few days ago, expressly denies due process to the firms that they might target. We've talked about the federal workers being fired by the thousands, and we're going to talk about more about this in the coming weeks as the firings are getting pretty large right now. They are being fired with no cause, no notice, and no ability to appeal. You're talking about people they've had jobs for 20 years. They show up to work yesterday and are not allowed in the building. That's it. No notice of anything wrong with what you're doing, no notice of any reason for firing. You show up to work on a 20-year job and you're not allowed in the building, not allowed to access your systems, nothing. And then no ability to challenge what's happening. You're just done. That's not due process. The administration is losing countless court cases already. I've never seen an administration lose so many court cases so fast because they keep violating the law. The courts keep telling the administration to release people from detention, to bring them back from El Salvador, to rehire federal workers, and the administration is defying orders right and left. They are, I will give them some credit for complying with some orders. Some people are being brought back to work, but otherwise, they keep delaying. The dog ate my homework. I can't find the people. I don't know the phone number, or just outright, nah, we don't want to do it. We don't want to do what you're saying. That's not due process. Where's the due process? So, is due process completely dead? I don't know. It's certainly dying. It's laying there on the hospital bed on life support right now. And if it doesn't get the right treatment, it's going to die very quickly because, like I said, the lack of due process in the cases we've talked about, the law firms, the federal workers, the deportations, um, immigration, those are burning embers in a forest. The death of due process can spread very quickly. And so we have to put that fire out now. A couple of quotes for you today to leave you with. This is from Glenn Kirschner. He's a former federal prosecutor, and he's now a legal commentator. Donald Trump just virtually shit all over the Fifth Amendment due process clause. Glenn does not mince words, as you might see. Oops, should say number two. My bad. This is an anonymous quote, and we're going to leave you with this one. This is a current Justice Department attorney, someone who's actively working in the Justice Department. A reporter asked them for comment on the situation, and this is the reply text the reporter received from a current attorney at the Justice Department about the situation. What the fuck? Exactly. I'll see you guys tomorrow.